Hello and welcome to Module 10.6b, Factoring Quadratic Trinomials when a does not equal 1. Our objective today is that I can determine the factors of trinomials with a leading coefficient not equal to 1. So our first example here is factoring ax squared plus bx plus c. And so in this case, we've got an a term, which is 3, so 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. Our a term is 3, our b term is 7, our c term is 2. So what we need to try to find, before we just looked at our c term, we found the factors of it that added up to our b term. Well, there was a step that we didn't do before, because technically you don't need to, but what it is, the factors we're looking for are actually going to be a times c. All right, now before our a value was 1, so we didn't need to do anything with this step. It was just there. So now we do need to do a times c, which is 3 times 2, and we get 6. So we're looking for factors of 6 that are going to add up to a positive 7, right? Our sum is still just our b term. So if we have, well, let's see, we've got a 1 and a 6, that's a positive 7. And that's what we are going for. So the first thing we do is our a term goes in the top left box, 3x squared. Our b term, our c term, 2, goes in the bottom right box. And then our two factors are going to go in our top right and bottom left boxes. So we've got an x and we've got a 6x. All right, so these two pieces go, and we'll go from below. They go here, and they go here. All right, so now we need to, if we remember back to the early part of the chapter, when I taught you multiplying two terms together, and we used the box method, this was like a Punnett square. Now we're going to kind of work the other way on it. And so we're breaking apart the Punnett square to find out what are the things that would multiply together to give me everything in those boxes. So when I look at my first row, 3x squared and x, what common factor do I have in that first row? The common factor is 3x. Nope, not 3x. The common factor is just x. In our second row, 6x and 2, the common factor is a 2. In my first column, going up and down, my common factors of 3x squared and 6x is going to be 3x. This is where the 3x is. And in x and 2, my common factor is a 1. So now I just have to rewrite my terms. We have 3x plus 1, and we have x plus 2, because every one of our terms was positive here. And that's what we call factoring by the box method. You put your c term in your top left box. Sorry, no, your a term goes in your top left box. Your c term goes in your bottom right, and your b terms are going to end up getting split into the other two pieces, right? And if we want to, we can double check our work on this and FOIL it. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times 2 is 6x. 1 times x is x. And 1 times 2 is 2, which then you combine to be 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. So essentially what we're trying to find is we are trying to find, when we find the values that go in this box, it's this, right? When we're factoring, we're trying to find these middle two terms of what are the two things that A and B are or A and C multiply to, but then add up to whatever that B value is, right? That's what we're looking for there. We're breaking that B value. We're breaking 7x up into multiple factors, in this case, 6x and 1x. All right, now we're going to look at a second method. Now, this method is the cross method. It's going to use two different skills. So the first thing is we need to figure out what are our factors and what do we fill into this box. So the first thing we do is we put our AC value in the top there. And so 6 times 5 is 30, right? And our B value is what goes in the bottom. And it is the bossy B value, or it's the bossy bottom, right? It is our B term. That is what we are going to be adding together our two terms and getting, right? And that is the B term is what is going to be, I say it's bossy because it is going to be the driving factor of all of the signs in your factors. It is the driving force behind that. So what do you mean? What do I mean? Well, I know I'm looking for factors of 30. So they could both be positive, they could both be negative. But if I look at my B value is positive. So that tells us they both have to be positive values in order to make our AC positive. So we've got a 1 and a 30, that gives me 31. We've got a 2 and a 15, that gives me 17, still not there. We've got a 3 and a 10, that gives me the 13 that I'm looking for. So we have a 3 and a 10. So now what we do with this method is we go to our factoring by grouping. So we have 6x squared plus 3x plus 10x plus 13. All I've done is take 3 and 10, and we're rewriting our b value as 3 plus 10 instead of 13. Instead of combining like terms, we're uncombining like terms. So if you remember factoring by grouping, we put our parentheses around the first two terms and the second two terms. In the first two, my common factors, we've got a 6x squared and a 3x. Common factor is a 3x. And I'm left with 2x plus 1. 10x and 13. Sorry, it's not 13, it's 5. I keep making that mistake. It is 5 is my last value because it's our C value. So we've got 10x and 5. We can bring out a 5, and we're left with 2x plus 1, which now we have a common factor in both terms there. So we have 2x plus 1 times the quantity 3x plus 5. And we close our parentheses. So a couple things as we look at these two problems. You'll notice we write them as two binomials with parentheses closed. The other thing that you should notice, or at least be aware of, is the order of these two terms does not matter. So I could write it as 2x plus 1 and 3x plus 5. I could also write it as 3x plus 5 and 2x plus 1. Right? Either of those two ways of writing it is appropriate and is correct. My tendency is the piece that I'm taking out, I put in the front, but there's no wrong answer on which term goes first. And the same on the box method, I chose the top one and then the side one. If you did the side one, then the top one, it's still the same expression. It's the same two factors being multiplied, so it doesn't matter. Okay? All right, I want you guys to try letters C and D on your own. I'm going to encourage you to try both methods as we go throughout these notes so that you could hopefully get a feel for whichever one is the most comfortable for you to use as you work. Letter C, I'm going to work via the box method. So I know we've got factors, we've got 3x squared, and we've got 4, and I'm looking for factors of 12 that have a sum of 8. Well, I could do 12 and 1, that gives me a sum of 13, but I could do 2 and 6, and I get a sum of 8. So we have, we'll do 2x and 6x. All right, my first row, 3x squared and 2x, common factor is an x. My second row, 6x and 4, common factor is a 2. First column, we've got 3x squared and 6x, common factor is a 3x. And my second column, we have 2x and we have a 4, so my common factor is a 2. And so I'm left with 3x plus 2 times x plus 2. Okay, 3x plus 2 times x plus 2. And that is our simplified form. All right, so now let's go to letter D. And I'm going to do this one by grouping, so using this kind of cross product method. So we have 12 and 10. Those are my two factors of 120 that add up to 22, right? So we have 120. Our factors are 12 and 10, and our sum is 22. 12 plus 10 is 22. So now let's write out our terms. We've got 8x squared plus 12x plus 10x plus 15. We put parentheses in. And our first term, we have 4x that can be taken out, and we're left with 2x plus 3. Our second term, we can bring a 5 out, and we're left with 2x plus 3. And then I find my common value, 2x plus 3, and we close the parentheses on that. And we have our what's left, which is 4x plus 5. Right, 4x plus 5 and 2x plus 3. Okay, that is how we do this. This was all of our terms are positive there. So now let's take a look at the next section. In the next section, we're going to be dealing with a b value that's negative. So that bossy b number is going to be negative now. That's going to change what our factors are. So we're looking for factors now of 42. 2 times 21 is 42. So factors of 42 that have a sum of negative 17. Our b value still stays as our sum. So I know that C is positive, so both of these numbers have to multiply to be a positive. So they're both either positive or they're both negative. But our B value is negative, so that tells me they both have to be negative. So if I have a negative 2 and a negative 21, that gives me negative 23. Well, that doesn't give me the right value. How about negative 3 and negative 14? Well, that gives me a negative 17. So we fill in our information, our A term in the top left, our C term in the bottom right, and the two factors that we just figured out, negative 3x, negative 14x. All right, first row, 2x squared and negative 3x, we can bring out an x. Negative 14x and 21, we're going to bring out a negative 7. So with box method, if you have a negative sign on the outside, that is the place you are going to take it out. Right, so I have a negative 14 there on the outside. I'm going to take the negative sign out there. Up on top, 2x squared and negative 14x. My common factor is a 2x. And a negative 3x and 21. I bring out the negative sign first. And 3 is a common factor for both of those. All right. So we rewrite this as 2x minus 3, and we have x minus 7. Okay. Now let's look at letter B. We're going to use that grouping method again. So I'm looking for factors of 10 that add up to negative 11. Well, I know that negative 10 and negative 1 multiply to be 10, and they add to be negative 11. So those are my two values, negative 10 and negative 1. So we rewrite our equation. We have 5x squared minus 10x minus x plus 2. And I start by putting in parentheses. And I like to make, instead of writing subtraction, I like to do adding the opposite. So I would always put a plus sign in between those two parentheses and make the negative in the second parentheses. And you'll see why in a second here. So 5x squared minus 10x, our common value is 5x, and we have x minus 2. Now in our second parentheses, I have negative x plus 2, which, if you'll remember, is the additive inverse to x minus 2. So I can just bring out a minus 1 onto the outside, and it flips the signs of everything inside. So now I have a common term that I can take out. So we have x minus 2, and we have 5x minus 1. Okay, so next up we have a u-try problem. And I want you to work through letter C on your own. You can choose which method you want to go through. I'm going to be demonstrating live for you the box method consistently on these u-tries, and then I'm going to walk you through pre-written a method solving by grouping. All right, so letter C, we start by filling in the pieces we know, 3x squared and 15. All right, so now I need my terms. I need my factors. What are my factors of 45 that add up to negative 14? It's going to be negative 9x and negative 5x. Negative 9 times negative 5 is positive 45, and they add together to be negative 14. All right, so first row, 3x squared minus 9x. Our common factor is a 3x. Our second row, negative 5x and 15. My common factor is negative 5. My first column, 3x squared and negative 5x. My common factor is an x. My second column, negative 9x and positive 15. Again, that negative's on the outside, so we bring it out there, and there's a common factor of a 3. So we have x minus 3, 3x minus 5. Okay, so now if we were to go over to our alternative method here, and what we're going to see is that we have our x at the top. We've got 45 is the product we're trying to find, and it's negative 9 and negative 5. We know this already. And it goes to a sum of 14, negative 14. So the first step was writing 3x squared minus 9x minus 5x plus 15 and grouping it. And when I grouped it, I found that I had a common factor of 3x in my first parentheses, and I had a common factor of negative 5 in my second parentheses. So when I bring out then my common factor of x minus 3, I'm left with 3x and minus 5. All right. Our next section here, we have factoring ax squared plus bx minus c. So we are changing it up. Our B value is positive. Our bossy B number is positive, and our C value is going to be negative. So one of our two factors is going to be negative, and it is going to be the smaller of the two because our B value is still positive. So that means the positive value has to be the larger magnitude of the two factors. All right, so if we look at letter A, we fill in the pieces that we already know. We know we have 10y squared, and we have a negative 14. Okay, so now we need to figure out what are my factors of negative 140 that add up to 31. Okay, now you might not know factors of negative 140 off the top of your head, but you can always work within the problem, and we've got some hints provided for us in the problem. So if you don't know the factors, well, frankly, you know one set of the factors. You know 10 times negative 14, right? And so we have negative 10, because I know it has to be the smaller of the two, and positive 14, right? I know that's one of my factors because that's literally how I got the negative 140. So what is the sum of that? The sum of that is 4. That doesn't help us, right? That is not our value. But it gives us a starting off point. So I know that maybe one of the factors of negative 10 is negative 5. So I'm going to try negative 5. And negative 5 times 28 is what gives us negative 140. Those two add together to be 23. Not quite right. Okay, what about the other factor of negative 10? And maybe we say it's negative 2 instead. Well, that's that's positive 70 is your other factor, which gives us 68. That doesn't help us. Okay, well, let's look at the 14. What if we try negative 7, right? Because that's a factor of 14. Well, that's going to give me 20. And 20 plus negative 7 is 13. Still not quite right. Okay, so I've done 2, I've done 5, I've done 7. Well, what are my other factors? Oh, wait, there's another 2 there. But I can't do 2 again, but I could do 2 times 2, and I could look at a factor of negative 4. And when I do negative 4, I find that it's times 35, which gives me the sum of 31. So, not knowing my factors of negative 40, I was able to logically work my way there using the factors of the terms that I already do know. And I'm able to explore and kind of piece together and troubleshoot and figure out what I need to use. All right, so we've got a negative 4y, and we have 35y. All right, so first row, 10y squared, negative 4y, common factor 2y. Second row, 35y, negative 14, common factor 7. First column, 10y squared, 35y, common factor 5y. Second column, negative 4y minus 14. Oh, negative is the first thing that I need to bring out because it's on the outside there. And common factors of 4 and 14 is a 2. So I'm left with 5y minus 2 and 2y plus 7. Okay, 5y minus 2, 2y plus 7. All right, let's look at letter B. We're going to use the grouping method on this, and we're looking for factors of negative 60 that add up to 7. Well, I could go with 30 and negative 2, that's 28. I can go with 15 and negative 4, that's 11. I could go with 12 and negative 5, that's what gets me to 7, right? So we have negative 60, we've got 12, a negative 5, and we're adding up to 7. So we write our expanded form, right? 15x squared plus 12x minus 5x plus, nope, minus 4. Okay, so 15x squared plus 12x minus 5x minus 4. And we put in our parentheses, and I like to put that plus sign there. So 15x squared and 12x, common factor, 3x. All right, and we're left with 5x plus 4. And we've got a plus sign. We've got negative 5x and negative 4. What can I take out? I can take out a negative 1. We've got 5x plus 4. My common factor between both of these terms is going to be 5x plus 4. And then we have 3x minus 1. Now you might be asking yourself, what if I switched the negative 5x and the 12x? Okay, well then I would be taking out 5x in the first term, and I'd be taking out a positive 4 in my second term. We're still getting 5x plus 4 and 3x minus 1 as my two factors anyways. Doesn't matter, it's not going to change things. All right, let's take a look. You try problem C is at the top of the page. Again, I'm going to work through the box method, and then you guys, I will walk you through a pre-written using solving by grouping on this one as well. So 2x squared plus x minus 6. We're looking for factors of negative 12 that add up to positive 1. I know 2x squared and negative 6 go in my box right away. And I'm looking for factors of negative 12 that add up to positive 1. Well, that's going to be 4x and minus 3x. All right, now my first row, 2x squared and 4x, common factors 2x. Second row, negative 3x and negative 6, common factors minus 3. 2x squared and negative 3x, common factor is an x. 4x and negative 6, common factor is a 2. So we have x plus 2, 2x minus 3. All right, so now if we take a look at our covered up piece here, and we look at it, So first off, we start off with our a times c, which is negative 12. So we're looking for factors of negative 12 that add up to our b value of 1 down at the bottom. So I know those are 4 and 3. So I rewrite it 2x squared plus 4x minus 3x minus 6. Hey, look, those first two terms are my first row. Those second two terms are my second row. And I am finding a common factor in each of them. And when I do in the first row, the 2x squared and 4x, the common factor I bring out is a 2x. And in my second row, the common factor that I took out was a negative 3. And what's left? They're both being multiplied by x plus 2, so you get x plus 2 times the quantity 2x minus 3. All right, so now we're going to look at letter A and B here, and we're going to be solving these when both terms, both B and C terms, are going to be negatives. So this means one of my middle terms, one of my factors is positive, one of them's negative, but it is the negative number now that has the greater magnitude and will be the driving force, the bossy number, if you will. All right, so we're looking for factors of negative 6 that have a sum of negative 1. Well, I know that that's going to be negative 3 and 2 that's adding up to negative 1. And so we've got 2x squared, we've got minus 3x, we've got plus 2x, and we've got minus 3. So my first row, 2x squared and negative 3x, we have an x. 2x and negative 3, we have a common factor of 1. 2x squared and 2x, common factor, 2x. And negative 3x and negative 3, we bring that negative sign out, and the common factor is 3. So we have 2x minus 3, and we have x plus 1. All right. Now, letter B, 5x squared minus x minus 18. So I'm looking for 5 times 18 is going to be negative 90. So what factors of negative 90 add up to negative 1? And when I figure those out, it's negative 10 and positive 9. So we write 5x squared minus 10x plus 9x minus 18. Put in our parentheses. My first term's 5x squared and negative 10x, common factor, 5x. And I'm left with x minus 2. My second term, we have 9x and negative 18, so we can bring out a 9, and I'm left with x minus 2. And now my common term is an x minus 2, and I'm multiplying that by 5x plus 9. Okay. All right, letter C, you try problem. Go ahead and get started on it on your own, and then check your work against mine. Again, I'm going to work the box method live, and then I'll walk you through some pre-written material for our factoring by grouping method. So first off, 4x squared goes in our top left box. Negative 15 goes in our bottom right box. And I need to find factors of negative 60 that add up to negative 7. It's going to be 5x, negative 12x. If you need to use your factor tables here and keep listing them out, go for it. But if you can start seeing these without needing that right away, then start just putting it right into the box method or right into grouping, and just kind of jump past that starting point, right? So my first row, 4x squared and 5x, common factor is an x. My second row, negative 12x and negative 15, the negative sign comes out first, and then a 3 is my common factor. My first column, 4x squared and negative 12x, the common factor is 4x, and 5x and negative 15, common factor is a 5. So you have 4x plus 5, and you have x minus 3 as your two terms. 4x plus 5 and x minus 3. So let's take a look at our work that I have covered up here. First thing we did, our boss EB value was -7. Our AC was -60. So I'm looking for factors of -60 that add up to -7, and I found the same two, 12 and -12 and +5, which I wrote as 4x squared plus 5x or minus 12x minus 15. And so then I put the parentheses in, and I also did that plus sign in between. I added the opposite, added the negative. And when I did that, my first terms, my common factor was an x, and I was left with a 4x plus 5, right? Same as in the box method, right? So these methods are parallel to each other. They're just presented a little differently. Then we brought the -3 out of 12x and 15. And so I was left with, in both of those pieces, a 4x plus 5. And then we bring that common term out, and it's 4x plus 5 times what remains, which is x minus 3. All right. Our last four problems are factoring out a monomial first. So this goes to the meme that is on the front cover of this section of, or this half of the notes, where one does not simply factor without looking for a GCF first. So find a GCF. Is there a greatest common factor? Well, we've got 8x squared, -36x, and 20, -20. So my GCF is a 4. So I bring a 4 out, and I'm left with 2x squared minus 9x minus 5. Okay, so now we have 2x squared there. We have a -5 there. And I'm looking for factors of -10 that add up to -9. Well, that's minus 10x. And that's plus an x. So my first row here, 2x squared, -10x, common factor, 2x. Second row, x and -5, common factor is a 1. First column, 2x squared and x, common factor is an x. -10x, -5, common factor is a -5. So we rewrite our terms, x minus 5, 2x plus 1, but we also need to remember that there is that GCF of a 4 that we divided out at the very beginning. So it's 4 times x minus 5 times 2x plus 1. Now, your two binomials, your two parentheses can be in whatever order, but your coefficient or your GCF that you factor out should be the first term in your sequence. All right, so letter B. We're going to look at the grouping method to factor this one. So first thing off, we've got 4x cubed plus 44x squared plus 36x. So what is my common factor that I can take out? I can bring out a 4x, and I'm left with x squared plus 11x plus 9. So now I'm looking for factors of 9 that have a sum of 11. Well, 1 and 9 gives me a sum of 10. 3 and 3 gives me a sum of 6. Well, what do I do here? I simply write prime, because x squared plus 11x plus 9 is the prime factorization. And so this is your factored form. All you could do on this problem was take out a GCF. Okay. So now we've got letters C and D for you to try on your own. Go ahead and do those, and then check your work against mine. All right, letter C. First thing I need to do is I need to take out a GCF. My common factor is simply a y, and I'm left with 3y squared minus 5y plus 2. So I'm looking for factors of 6 that have a sum of -5. So factors of +6 that have a sum of -5. We've got -6 minus 1, that gives me -7. But we also have -3, -2, which gives me -5. So we put our factored form first there. So we got 3y squared. We've got a minus 3y, minus 2y, and we have a plus 2. All right, so first row, 3y squared and negative 3y, common factor, 3y. Second row, negative 2y and 2, common factor, negative 2. First column, 3y squared and negative 2y, common factor, y. Negative 3y and 2, common factor, negative 1. So we start off, we have the y, we have y minus 1, we have 3y minus 2. Those are our three terms. Okay. And if we look at our hidden work here, we see the same work basically. We find that our a times c is 6, our b value is negative 5, so we're looking for factors of 6 that add up to negative 5. We get negative 3 and negative 2, which I substitute in below. Instead of the negative 5y, it's negative minus 3y minus 2y. Okay, we find the common factor in the first term is 3y. Common factor in the second set of terms is 2, minus 2. And then I bring out a y minus 1. And what I did forget to write on this work is I needed to include the y that I took out initially. So I have that GCF there as well. So it's y times y minus 1 times 3y minus 2. All right, last problem here, letter D. We take away a common factor of 2, and I'm left with 15x squared plus 7x minus 4. So we're looking for factors of negative 60 that have a sum of 7. Well, that's come up a couple times already, so I know it's negative 5 and 12. So we're going to go ahead and substitute in what we know. We've got 15x squared. We have negative 4. We have negative 5x. We have 12x. First row, 15x squared, negative 5x. We have a 5x common. 12x and minus 4, that's a 4. 15x squared and a 12x, that has a common factor of 3x. Negative 5 and 4, common factors negative 1. So we have a 2, we have 3x minus 1, and we've got 5x plus 4. And again, we're going to check our post-it note, what it's hiding, and we get the fact that we have an AC of negative 60, a B value of 7, nothing changed from the other side. We've got factors of negative 5 and 12. So when we substitute those in the middle here, we've got x plus 15x squared plus 12x minus 5x minus 4. Common factor in your first two terms is 3x. You're left with 5x plus 4. Common factor in your second two terms is a minus 1. You're left with 5x plus 4. You bring the 5x plus 4 to the outside, and you have times 3x minus 1 remaining. And again, we need to remember to write in our GCF that we brought out, which was a 2. All right. If you have any questions, please bring them to class tomorrow. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.